ICE seems to be backing down in Minneapolis after months of contention with local communist protesters. Virginia Democrats are showing us just how to wield political power when given the opportunity. And the Ayatollah has been declared dead after widespread war breaks out in the Middle East. All of this and more on this month's Roundtable. All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of the New Columbia Movement Roundtable. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to sit down and join us for another discussion. This is going to be the first discussion of the year of 2026. We missed January, and I was thinking to myself, maybe it's kind of a good thing that we missed January because the month was so back-to-back with events. We would have been talking for 2 to 3 hours plus. But here we are in February, and it seems like the accelerator has not been let up whatsoever. Normally, we're not fortunate enough to catch these things as they're happening. We're usually talking about them a few weeks after, but it just so happens today, a little thing happened in the Middle East that's worth talking about. So we'll get into that and many other things. But before we do, I want to go around the table and give everybody an opportunity to introduce themselves and talk a little bit about what their vice is. Now, we were talking about this just before we started recording. It is a season of penitence. It is Lent, after all. Hopefully, you all are observing. So if you're a degenerate like me, you brought a vice nonetheless. But if you're not, and you are fully ingratiated in the Lenten observance, then I think tonight we'll just also talk about what we're doing for Lent as a little early encouragement here for everybody else as well. So, gentlemen, thank you guys for joining me tonight. Liam, how about we start with you? What you got going?
So I did give up sugar and alcohol, so I brought a Spindrift. So it's only a drain on my bank account. How much that costs per can?
Is that like fizzy water?
It is seltzer water with real juice.
Dude. Everybody's on that trend now.
But I'm a husband, a recent father. I'm a native Georgian, and I've got a background in law enforcement. This is my second time being on the panel, so I'm glad to be back, Sean, and looking forward to our discussion.
Awesome. Welcome, man. Tyler, what you got going?
Hi, my name is Tyler. This is my first time on the show. I've been in the movement for about a year now, coming in from the state of Kansas. I was originally over towards New York. I've been an East Coaster for most of my life. But now I'm in the Sunflower State, and I'm very glad to be here for this opportunity tonight and being with you all here. I don't have a vice tonight because I'm going to be driving right after this, and I do not want to catch a DUI. So I just have some good old-fashioned Dr. Pepper, just enjoying some caffeinated beverage in my life as we get started with all this.
Cool. Awesome. And Nick, last but not least, what you got going?
Hello, everybody. It's great to be here. My name is Nick. This is my first time on this show. Thank you all so much for having me. I've been a part of the New Columbia movement for a couple of months now. I'm from Louisville, Kentucky. If you couldn't tell by my sultry accent, I cannot help it. But I am the founder and editor-in-chief of Catholic Manhood, the blog, and very happy to be here. So
nice. Excellent. Well, we're happy to have you here. You've been a tremendous asset since you've joined, and guys, check out Catholic Manhood if you guys are on social media. I know you're on X. Are you on any other platforms?
Yes. So I'm on X, Instagram, Facebook, Threads, and Substack. And this year I'll be beginning re-beginning the podcast, and I'll be on YouTube as well for the first time ever. So
right on. That's awesome. Yeah. I'll say when it comes to social media in general, which just so happens to coincide with one of my Lenten fasts, I have given up social media, but qualitative content is a rare thing. But I think, your stuff and the things you post, including your Substack, which I read a little bit of that I forgot to mention, is all very qualitative stuff. So I think it's definitely worth checking out, and it's a value asset. I feel like I get something out of it rather than the majority of social media, which is just a drain.
I really appreciate that. Thank you, man. And just to let everybody know, this is a shameless plug. I forgot to talk about my penance. So all these years growing up in Kentucky, a lot of tobacco around. I like tobacco. I've been trying my hardest to continuously stop I have these velos right here. There's one in my, I got a lip pillow in. But that's kind of my vice for the evening for sure. So takes the edge off.
You're rocking Velos and not Alps. You're not going to support our boy Tucker.
So I've had the Alps, man. So it's whatever gets my mind off of any type of cigarettes, and this has helped quite a bit. But yeah, the Alps do taste good. I'll give them that.
I do have to say, I gave all my guys some cans of the Alps, and they got canker sores. So I don't know.
Uh-oh.
I hated them.
That was
Hey,
from the
come on.
person that gave it to them, you know.
Yeah. We're trying to get that Tucker Carlson highlight. You can't be talking bad about Alp. All right. Trying to end up on the highlight reel. Yeah, I'm a tobacco guy too. Normally I am smoking a cigar or something for these, but my new living arrangements don't really allow for that as much. So unfortunately, I'm relishing myself with a nice amber lager here. This is the Vienna lager from Devil's Backbone. This is a Virginia brewed beer. I don't know if I promoted this one on the Roundtable before or not, but brewed in Lexington, Virginia. If you are a fan of like Yingling, excuse me, if you're a fan of Yingling or anything similar, I would say this is very, very similar to a Yingling, except it's got a little bit more of a depth of flavor. Now, the contrast is Virginia is now an occupied state, so you would be supporting communism with your money. But I am already a tax-paying citizen, so, you know.
That grandfather did.
You win some, you lose some.
I'm grandfathered in, so I'm going to enjoy myself a nice communist beer. All right, gentlemen. Well, thank you guys for being here again. So we got a few things to go over tonight. Obviously, the big one's going to be Iran, so I kind of want to save that there for the end. But the first thing that I wanted to get into a little bit was the ICE operations, because obviously this really ramped up big time going through January, which we did not have the opportunity to sit down and discuss. Minneapolis, Minnesota has been the highlight reel of the kind of extended operations in the United States, with ICE in particular. And obviously we've had a few incidents that gained a lot of notoriety. And more recently, we've seen some comments both from Donald Trump and Tom Homan and the likes talking about what appears to be a scaling back of the ICE operations. So I wanted to kind of get your guys' perspective on, one, the effectiveness of this kind of campaign promise of Trump to have the largest deportation effort in American history, to kind of, one, get rid of the illegal aliens who aren't supposed to be here and kind of reclaim our heritage and our country's identity, close up the borders, enforce common laws that, you know, have always been standard up until about the last 10 decades when everything went off the scales. Are you happy with how things are going? If not, what needs to change? And what do you make of the most recent comments around Trump and Tom Homan kind of scaling back operations and, you know, from my perspective, seemingly giving some concessions in that regard? But I'll turn it over to you guys first, and then I'll chat a little bit about it.
I mean, I'll say I just think it's a terrible disappointment. This is Trump's second term. We were all promised, what was it, Dark MAGA? He's going to come in, not have to worry about the campaigning for another term, get everything done, and it just seems to be pointless concessions. It's not like the administration was doing anything wrong or immoral, unethical, just upholding the law. And by giving in to these leftist ideologues, it's not going to win us any friends or any points. We've done this time and time again in the American conservative movement, and all it does is set us back.
No, I fully agree with that. I think I had a conversation with a buddy of mine about a month ago when everything was going on in Minneapolis, and we kind of discussed about the optics of the situation and the tactics that were being employed by ICE and the strategy employed by the administration. And one thing we kind of had a back and forth on and a final realization of is that Trump's strategy overall was to have this great deportation effort, all this energy, just go in, hit every single target that you possibly can as quick and as fast as possible. But the reality is that it was way more for show than there was actual action from the ICE agents. And this kicked them in the knees, because if they went in and did everything that they said they would do, during Trump's campaign, what would have happened is that all that energy that the left had to protest and to build up support wouldn't have been there, because the operation would have been mostly done within a week, because they delayed everything on their end and they overpromised and they wanted to make a spectacle and try to boost up the morale of MAGA by having these deportations happen in a more slow pace so that they can get the cool footage. They can get like the cool, intense footage of them dragging out illegals from the street, dragging out drug dealers. Because they committed to that route, that allowed for time for our political opposition to rally and to start making counter propaganda, start going in the streets, and start messing up the ICE operations, which is what led to like the shootings and everything. I find it to be a terrible disappointment myself, and I think they dropped the ball strategically, and that's what led to these tactical errors.
Mm-hmm. And for my take on this, I'd like to kind of switch the perception for a moment as well, equally on policy, but from more of an anecdotal view. Where I live, I'll be honest with you, I haven't noticed any change whatsoever. It hasn't, it's probably impacting my tax dollars quite a bit more than my quality of life. And I draw a lot of issue with that. When he was elected on these things, and to echo Liam and Tyler here, you know, we were promised some very specific things. And Sean, with what you talked about, those concessions, the Homeland Security is framing this as like these deportations as historic, and in many ways maybe they are. I think, and I could be wrong about this, I think they've reported over 675,000 illegal aliens have been removed. And I was talking to some friends about this. That's all well and good. And I can only worry about things that I can control myself. However, I do think it's going to take a lot more, and it's going to take being seen, at least from the administration, as being mean to restore things to how they should be. There's still a lot of fraud, and in multiple sectors, in government and in business. And as a taxpayer, a small business owner, what I see is no change. My tax dollars going to things that I did not vote for. And that's happened all of my life. So it's more of the same. And I genuinely don't know how to fix that other than escalating what needs to change, to be as polite as possible.
Yeah, I think there was a necessary assumption going into these ICE operations that fundamentally it was going to be ugly. Not because we wanted it to be ugly business, but because we have kicked the can down the road to such a point where there was going to come a time where we were either going to have to nut up or shut up. And Trump presumably took the nut up route and said, we're going to do, you know, what needs to be done to protect this country. You know, and of course he famously posted the quote of Napoleon, and it says something to the effect of a man who defends his country commits no crime, or something like that, right? And to an extent, I agree with that. I think what we saw was, going back to what all of you guys were saying, is we kind of let things get out of control. And I'm not sure what the expectation was, but for me, the expectation was very clear. We already have history of violent leftists in this country when you look at the likes of Antifa, John Brown Gun Club, and others, who actively organized regularly to resist Trump's efforts. ICE was a very physical manifestation of Trump's efforts to retain what we have left of a country. And they very quickly, and to their credit, very effectively mobilized against it. And I think to an extent we allowed that to happen. And I think the problem is, and this goes into so many facets of policy in our modern era when it comes to dealing with the political crisis that we're having right now, is we enter into this mindset of compromise when there simply is no compromise to be made. If you took me back to 1930s and 1940s America, where you had a Democratic and a Republican Party who were disagreeing about different things, but they still had a common aim and a common goal, then we could talk about compromise, because effectively what we're talking about is different measures to achieve the same goal. We're not talking about that in this instance and in many other instances when it comes to policy debate. Right now, we were talking about, do we want to retain the laws and identity of our country, or do we want to hand it over to the third world and the likes of self-destructive leftism? We chose that we want to hold back the tide of self-destructive leftism and their kind of unwitting soldiers on the ground, which is the importation of the third world. That was going to be an ugly business. But now we are giving concessions to the leftists when they act out. And I look at this very simply. Okay. I don't look at your average leftist with a person with any real persuasion or political agencies that I should take seriously. I look at them to the same degree as I look at a child who needs to be basically given lateral limits in life so that they don't do something self-destructive that harms them and other people around them. So I don't look at them as my peer, plain and simple. Sorry, you're not my peer. You don't behave in a way that suggests you're my peer intellectually, physically, spiritually, with any level of discipline in your life. And so to me, government, as it always has been, is a means of kind of enforcing the mechanisms and the virtues and the values of society when it is necessary. It's the application of law. It's force. When you concede to a child, if they start to act out in public, right? And this is actually a perfect example because you see a lot of this today. And some of you guys here have kids, so you kind of understand this a little bit. If you see a kid acting out in like a Costco, right? You'll get one of two types of parents. You'll get the one that disciplines them and then ignores them, or you'll get the one that tries to appease them by handing them whatever it is they want, their iPad, their juice box, right? What do you think the long-term effects of the appeasement of the child is versus the discipline of the child? I'm not a father, so I can't speak to this personally, but I think I have a general understanding of the application of parental discipline to say that you need to provide that discipline in order to reinforce the idea of what is acceptable behavior, especially in public places. If you discipline them at home, that's one thing. But if they learn that they can act out and get their way in public places, what's that going to do for them in the long run? What we have done is we've given concessions to the leftists to say that if you act out like this, if you organize, if you actively harass law enforcement, who has every right to be there, then you'll get your way. And I think that's the fundamental mistake that we made. I can't for the life of me understand why he's backing down on this.
I think there's another problem that we kind of haven't mentioned here. I think Tyler might have gotten close to it, is the fact that, to your point, Sean, we kind of came out with the hard power of the ICE agents in the street doing all the deportations. The reality is there were so many illegal aliens in this country that we were never going to be able to deport all of them with an agent going to a house and finding an illegal alien. There's going to have to be what you might call the soft power, encouraging the self-deportations. And all that tough talk from the Trump administration coming in did encourage a lot of self-deportations. There were numbers coming out that were showing it was happening. People just saying, okay, I don't want to get deported by ICE. I'm just going to go home on my own. But we completely failed to incentivize people to return. There was talk of passing that national remittance tax, and it got completely gutted in the Senate. As it stands now, I think Oklahoma is the only state with a remittance tax. So we have billions of dollars being sent out of this country, some of it I'm sure being fudged from welfare funds. And it's just been a complete failure of the Trump administration to crack down on remittances, welfare loopholes, to make sure there's an environment where the illegal aliens just decide to go home. So, of course, the hard power is never going to work on its own.
Yeah, and if I can kind of add a little bit to that point, the whole issue of today is that the administration wants to frame all of their efforts as being historic, unprecedented, and the best that there's ever been. But if you look back to the Eisenhower administration, for example, he deported, I believe, about 1 to 2 million illegal immigrants in 2 years. And that was in a time period when we didn't even have a border war with Mexico. Prior to World War I, we had a border war with Mexico, and we deported hundreds of thousands of Mexicans in a very short amount of time with a lot less equipment and a lot less expertise in the field. It was just regular army men committing these deportations because we were at war. Nowadays, we're struggling to even get like hundreds of thousands of people out of the country, and many of those hundreds of thousands are actively in cartels, affiliated with cartels, or narcs, or selling drugs on their own, or doing heinous and ridiculous things. And there's about 20 million illegal immigrants in the country, more than there's ever been in any other period in history. Well, it's starting to present a bit of a problem. And I think this problem, I think everyone here has kind of touched on it, but if I can kind of elaborate on it, is that I think the American public has been passive for so long that they're afraid of violence of action. That doesn't mean like shedding blood, but we're such a lethargic society that has basically been fed off of the fat of our World War II victory, of our circumstances post-Korea War, that we don't want to see people getting removed who are violent criminals. We want to see them rehabilitated. We believe so deeply in these ideals of liberty and of restoration and all the values that our post-World War II society gave us, but they failed us. And we don't want to see them like go. And so we've just sat on these principles that aren't working. And after all this time, letting them kind of stew and not changing anything, well, now we're facing the consequences of it. So the first time in decades when any kind of real action is happening, the American public is stunned by it. And I think that's what led to these leftist riots in the first place, is because most of these people are having a knee-jerk reaction to actually seeing someone get dragged out of their home. And anywhere else on earth, that is not a strange thing. That's a daily occurrence. And in some ways it's unfortunate, but at least in the United States, we only had like 2-3 deaths from the ICE riots. In Venezuela, in Latin America, and anywhere in Asia, you would see tens of thousands of deaths from any kind of border operation like this. So I think the American public vastly overreacted to the situation. And so we're self-sabotaging because we don't want to let go of that era where, oh, well, maybe we can fix them. But the reality is we can't. I don't know. But what do you gentlemen think about this?
So I'd like to touch on a couple of things that you all had mentioned already. Sean, you've really touched on patriarchy. And I think a good understanding of that is not a rule by men. It is a rule by fathers. And when the father does not properly discipline your child, when you give concessions to a bad behaving child, they will grow up and they will continue to make such bad decisions, and they will end up having a disordered view of the real world and of consequences of such things and of right and wrong in general. And that's what you see. To go into that a little more, in America, what you've seen is suicidal empathy because of a lack of patriarchy. That suicidal empathy has created riots defending 70% of those arrested by ICE have been like hardened criminals. You have leftist, specifically liberal women, I would say for the most part, defending child rapists. Mm-hmm. And that is not anecdotal. That is a fact. It's been caught on camera multiple times. And that is what you're fighting against. My question is, why would you concede with such a worldview? Why would you allow that? And on top of that, I don't think that you could ever come to any type of middle road with people with such an ideology. And Liam, I think that's a good point what you mentioned. Yes, we do need, the pedal to the metal with our government to deliver what they promised. But on top of that, the for lack of a better word, you need some type of propaganda or some type of societal understanding of why they're doing this. Everyone needs to pitch in. And Tyler, like you brought up in with the Eisenhower era, everybody, whether right or wrong about World War II, everybody was on board with that. There wasn't a single person. I mean, I'm sure there were, but for the most part, all of those people pitched in. All of society had pitched in. And when you get to where you have the highest amount of illegal immigrants, to my understanding, this nation's ever seen, it has destabilized law. It has destabilized the economy. It has destabilized real estate. And how do you fix that? You simply send them back. And that is not immoral, and that is not unjust. You can always disagree maybe of the way somebody may be held. For instance, I still think, and I may get some disagreements here, but I still think it's okay for a priest to go in to a detention center and, celebrate mass and give the Eucharist. But the general idea is there should be no qualms about sending a criminal back. And by you stepping your foot over that line, it's very simple. It's trespassing. It's a very simple law. It's a universal one. And the fact that there is any disagreement of that, I don't know how to fix that. So I'll end my statement with that with really that question: how do we fix such a thing where there's irreconcilable differences of reality? And I don't know, because we voted for this and we still haven't gotten it. What's the next step after that?
Well, I think, true justice, so we would understand the word, I'm going to come up with a definition here on the spot. Justice to me would be the virtuous application of law in spite of the opposing party's behavior. So what you mentioned about the idea of like a priest going into these precincts and, serving the Catholic population the mass, right? Like I stated at the beginning of this, I truly, and people can believe me or not, but I truly and genuinely do not relish in the idea that we have to do what we're doing. Okay. I don't get excited, but I get excited generally at the prospect of retaining control of our country and moving in the right direction. But the idea that I'm sitting and relishing about, people having to be taken out of their homes and deported, or, leftists who I would vehemently disagree with getting shot in the process, even though I can clearly put the consequences of their actions on them, I still don't appreciate and enjoy those things because it is a tragedy. But I think we still have to have that justice nonetheless. And that's where I feel like the disconnect is. I think we went hard and heavy into the propaganda of the measures. And don't get me wrong, I love whoever's running the DHS Homeland Security Twitter account, X account, as much as the next guy. Right? I mean, there were many days where I'm just looking at my phone, like jaw dropped, like I can't believe, like this is our guy. Our guy is posting this stuff. Hilarious. But to play devil's advocate for my own point, I can certainly see how that kind of rhetoric was riling up the leftists to act against the real efforts, which at the end of the day, it's not the propaganda I'm after, it's the results. And I think we were getting more of the propaganda and less of the results. And then the issues just compounded one another. And that's kind of where we are today. It wasn't just that they were scaling back operations in Minneapolis. I read an article yesterday that they were abandoning plans to start these big ICE detention facilities. And
They're
the governor,
them?
what's that?
They're abandoning those?
Yes. And at least some of them, maybe not all of them, but there was a significant swath of like these big ICE detention facilities that they were planning on converting these warehouses into, that they're kind of just abandoning now. And I know, what's the governor's name of Pennsylvania? Shapiro. Can't remember his first name. I know he made some statements the other day where he was basically saying, I will do everything in my power to prevent Trump from putting any of those in our state. So they're not taking active measures to do the things that they need to do. And I think that's a disappointment. And I hope that we're wrong. And I hope I understand there are legitimate logistical concerns. You do have to train a police force to go out and actually do these jobs. And there is something to be said about this as an intense job where you have to have a high degree of training, and there's still going to be mistakes no matter what. So I understand logistical concerns. My hope, my fingers crossed, because I want to love the guy, is that they're reeling back in the short term to readdress the problems, and not necessarily the problems of leftists getting themselves killed because they don't understand the consequences of their actions, but more so the problems of we're not being effective in our deportation efforts, and this is coming across as a bad taste in the mouth to our base. So we'll see what happens. Liam, one thing I did want to get your opinion on before we move on to the next section, though, was the actual, and you guys can all put your input in on this as well, but Liam, since you've got a law enforcement background, the actual killings of Renee Good and what was the other guy's name? Do we remember? I'm blanking.
Is it Petty or something along those lines?
Yeah, Petty. Yeah. What's your assessment of that? I
think most people forget that violence is never pretty. In any of these situations, I've looked at both of those. I'm not an expert, probably haven't seen all the footage. Violence isn't pretty. If you're going to get out there and you're going to fight law enforcement officers, you have crowds screaming at them. In the case of, I think, is Mr. Petty, there were people blowing whistles within a police cordon. Mistakes happen. In that particular case, from my understanding, it was a situation of one officer grabbed his gun. Somebody yelled he has a gun. The gun goes off when they disarm him. Another officer shoots him. That's a horrible, I don't even want to say accident, because if somebody has a gun and is shooting at you, you shoot them. But an unfortunate circumstance where there's miscommunication, misidentification, what was going on, that I think is inherent to when you're using violence. And when we're out there having to forcibly put hand arms on somebody because they've committed a crime or they need deported, ugly things happen. That's my take on it. I hate to be a Monday morning quarterback.
Well, that's what we're here for. You're looking at 4 Monday morning quarterbacks right now. So
I don't, at the end of the day, there is no mercy without justice. And we have to abide by the laws of this country. And if our executive branch does not uphold them, then no one will. Or it'll get worse, like these riots that you see. Whatever the issue. I mean, we have a country that's built on revolution. It's not easy to keep a cap on that, whatever it is, right or wrong. So hopefully that gets better. But Sean, I do think maybe it's a good point to say maybe they are scaling back for a greater purpose and then push that towards the end of this administration.
Time will tell. Well, moving on to political actors that do not know how to wield power when given the opportunity. I wanted to talk a little bit about the Virginia elections because it was kind of significant. And Abigail Spanberger, new governor, this, a little bit biased here. This is close to my heart because I am a Virginian, born and raised and presently living. Abigail Spanberger, our new governor, was actually the one chosen to give the counter remarks for this kind of State of the Union counter whatever that the Democrats held. Abigail Spanberger, for all intents and purposes, is very new to the national scene as governor of Virginia. And she's all, and we'll get into some of the things that Virginia has come out of the gate swinging with. I found it very interesting because and I know I wasn't the only one saying this, but I kind of made a predictive argument that Spanberger was being set up to be a political player in the 2028 election. I don't know if that's the case or not. She does have a little bit of a Hillary Clinton vibe. Certainly with all the Epstein files, there are a lot of kind of entrenched politicians on both sides of the aisle who are losing a lot of credibility right now as a result of this. So here you have this kind of a new emergent moderate Democrat who's just won governorship and swung the state blue back from Glenn Youngkin, and is now appearing on the political stage and seemingly posturing for a presidential run in 2028. I don't know. That's just wild speculation, but it does seem to me that it's very odd how she's kind of being lifted up by the Democratic Party, because I think we're all nihilistic enough not to think that these things just kind of happen naturally. So I want to get you guys' kind of political takes on the scene here. I am going to bring up a few things. I had them pulled up on my phone. I need to find them again, about just some of the legislations that have been proposed. Particularly, I am going to find a picture of the gerrymandering that was luckily, at least temporarily, been blocked by a court. But let's speak a little bit to just kind of how the Democrats are not afraid to wield power, because it seems to me like this is the contrast to the conversation we were just having. When Democrats feel like they have the mandate of heaven, they go in full bore. And that's what's happening here. It's not just Abigail Spanberger. I mean, it's the Attorney General Jay Jones, who, if you guys remember last year, in the midst of his campaign, there was this huge scandal around him basically saying that he wanted to kill his political opponents, not just kill his political opponents, kill the wives and children of his political opponents. Our current and acting Attorney General. I think Glenn Youngkin was largely a failure in the grand scheme of things. He was political fluke as a result of COVID, I think, because I tend to believe that even despite the present gerrymandering of my beautiful state, Virginia is still very much a blue-leaning state, unfortunately, for reasons that we can get into. And now they're just trying to secure power and ensure that this state remains in a blue state forever in perpetuity. So let me get your takes on that. I'm going to pull up this list of some of the things that were proposed by our new Virginia legislator, and get you guys' opinions on that as well.
So I'll say I have my own kind of bias. A lot of my family's historically from Virginia, but more so we moved west towards West Virginia and Kentucky. I have not ever really been in Virginia outside of a few vacations, but something I've definitely noticed, being an East Coaster, is the steady decline of the state throughout the entirety of my life. And I'm not an old person by any means. I'm rather young. But it's become really apparent to me that Virginia used to be this hotbed state with the best and brightest minds throughout the entire United States because of its proximity to D.C. So you have some of the greatest military minds, greatest military families, the high-end generals, the high-end enlisted, sergeant majors in the Army and the Air Force, and throughout all the branches of our armed service. You have some of the best in IT and in major technical fields, in engineering and the hard sciences and physics and all those things. And then you also had some of the greatest minds in very specialty fields, in medicine, in animal care. And you had all these people who were very rich, very affluent, mainly in Alexandria, but also spread throughout a large portion of the state. We're all working generally in D.C., all these politicians. Virginia was a state that's pretty much made, right? It's guaranteed to have a successful population of people doing a lot of great things. And like many other states with giant urban centers, things like illegal immigration and hardcore leftism just completely destroyed the state. Absolutely squandered it. And something I've noticed is that in comparison to poor West Virginia truly has community. And in Western Virginia, towards the George Washington National Forest and areas like that, they have true community because those communities have never been really uprooted, and they still have their time-honored traditions. They still have church. They still have God, and they still have each other. The families that have been in those towns and in those small cities have been there pretty much for forever. You go over towards Alexandria, your best shot at a community is like your neighbor in your apartment complex. It's rough. It really is.
The thing about Northern Virginia that I think a lot of people don't understand, because this is where I am, that a lot of people don't understand outside of Northern Virginia, is it's a very transient place. This is not, like you were saying, this is not a place where communities are formed. This is where people, not just from all over the country, but all over the world, come to suck off the government teat. And as a result of its transience, you don't have a lot of community that forms to kind of preserve the traditions of a place that would stand up against this kind of rampant progressivism. You also get a highly diverse society within the boundaries of Northern Virginia, or the DMV, DC, Maryland, and Virginia, which if you read, Robert Putnam's research, who wrote Boiling Alone in 2000, and he wrote a follow-on paper in 2007, as you get more and more diverse communities in these areas, political, civil, religious practice all goes down. So you have less of a defense against this kind of these progressive actions. And it is a place where you just have so many foreigners that there's not any common sense of what it means to be a Virginian here. I mean, it really is part of the greater DC. So you're not preserving a state or a community. The big thing is that everybody's here because they are in some way or another connected to the massive bureaucratic apparatus that is DC and the United States at large. So their allegiances are there, right? And if your allegiances are to the bureaucratic apparatus and the middle managers that run it, then you are a big government guy through and through. You are progressive. You are voting blue. And that's where we are. And I'll pull up a map of these new district proposals. It'll blow your mind. If you've been to Virginia, if you've not been to Virginia, it should blow your mind. Because it is truly crazy.
Sean, can I ask you a question while you pull that up as a Virginian?
Please.
I know as of the Trump administration, one of their goals was to, break up all the libtard bureaucrats who are in the DC metro area. And they talked about moving different administrations to other parts of the country. Has that been successful in any measure, or is it still just full of bureaucrats?
It's definitely still full of bureaucrats. And there's another kind of failure. I mean, and this is, there are two kind of trump cards, to use a term, that the federal government has to, sorry, I'm trying to pull up this picture and think at the same time. It usually doesn't work. If they felt so inclined to kind of fight back against what Virginia is doing. Number one is the historical precedent around Arlington, Virginia, which is that it used to be a part of DC. And so I can't speak in any depth to the degree of which there is an actual capability there for DC to reclaim that and kind of take a chunk out of a voting block of Virginia. But that has been proposed. And the other thing is, yes, precisely what you mentioned. There was a campaign promise that we were going to break up the apparatus that is the bureaucratic DC and the surrounding areas to different parts of the country. One, to provide economic stimulation, because at this point, the GDP, the federal government accounts for over half of the GDP anyway. So if you want to stimulate the economy, you gotta use the federal government, because we've abandoned the idea of small business, I guess. And that has not happened. Now, I could be missing something, that maybe there have been a few things that have been moved around, but that kind of thing, that kind of word spreads in the DC area. And I can tell you for one thing, people are not leaving, right? They're not building less homes. We don't have lots that are sitting vacant like you do in the industrial Northeast outside of these major cities. This area is booming. I am in an industry that works directly parallel to a lot of the construction. So I see it firsthand. Everything is coming here. Here's one of my complaints about Youngkin, is he was very much of a business candidate. He was not very big on the social conservatism. He made some campaign promises that he didn't follow through on, like preservation of identity, specifically around the kind of attacks against the old Confederate memorials and these types of things. Didn't really do much to push back on that. But he was a business guy, right? And so he wanted to bring businesses to Virginia. And what that has resulted in is a fair number of headquarters moving to Virginia, but that's just it. It's been headquarters. It's not necessarily production line, high employment businesses that have been moving. It's been the headquarters of national and multinational companies that have moved here for certain tax advantages and set up shop, bringing small corporate teams with them. The other thing that they brought a lot of is data centers. Now, Northern Virginia in particular operates on a cooperative electric situation called Novak. Loudoun County, which is the county just to the north of me, has the highest density of data centers in the world. Prince William County, just south of Loudoun, has the second highest density of data centers in the world and is on track to be the first, because they're building more and more and more. I'm not kidding you. I'll be on a 30-minute drive around DC, and you will see horizons of data centers, which just goes right back into the point that there's no community here, and there's nobody willing to build community here because, people are getting their balls radiated just living around these data centers. It's ridiculous. So I think a lot of the policies that, I won't speak to the intention or the heart of Youngkin, that he instituted have actually kind of worked against Virginians in the long run. Speaking to the data centers in particular, these data centers employ like 20 people, maybe tops. You get people that travel and do HVAC work, but these people are not necessarily based in Virginia. They travel the country working on these sites. You have your local security that, works a night shift for $25 an hour, and that's about it. And so it's causing a massive power draw, particularly in these areas too, where, I've seen videos of people talking about their energy bill spikes, just incredible, because they're sharing that bill with the data centers that are coming in. And of course, Spanberger has not done much to mitigate that at all either.
It's unfortunate because I think Brian Kemp has done the same thing in Georgia, being a business conservative. I think he put the final nails in the coffin for Georgia going blue as well.
A business conservative is a Democratic candidate in 2026, I would say, unfortunately. Now, Sean, I don't know a ton about Virginia, but living in Kentucky, I have seen quite a bit of, Andy Beshear. Like you said, these things don't just happen. You start to see people kind of raising up in the ranks. And I will make my point quick to go to the redistricting. But it seems that the Democrats have a playbook. And one thing that it's an eternal advantage, but in the realm of politics, especially in America, what you see on the left is many of them don't believe in God. The state is their God. They will do whatever means necessary to get through what they need to get through. And that's your point, talking about I believe the Attorney General saying that he would kill his political enemies. Nothing's going to happen to him in the afterlife because there isn't one. That's how a lot of them think. How do you combat that? Well, another thing that they're very good at, you have to give them credit. They understand how power works, at least, in reality. They understand how power works, not the ideal. I was having a conversation with some friends of mine about this. Local, like your city council, going to town hall meetings, etc. Those types of things really do matter. And you have to have a sense of community with that. So maybe you're saying that because of the way Virginia was created in the first place, it was created in it to be Democrat run forever, possibly, for the most part, because of that lack of community. I don't know. I still, again, dare we hope. But I guess what I'm getting at, what you see is the left has a very specific playbook. They're very good in the local sphere, and that translates to who you have as your senators and your congressmen and your governor. Local, I don't think a lot of conservatives. Well, I'll say this: I think the left has a better game plan of local government than conservatives do, and I think that should be addressed. And it seems to be very clear with these types of things I'm learning about Virginia, of what you all have been talking about.
I think the liberals in general just have a natural tendency to organize better than the right does. And that's because many on the right are inclined to kind of keep to themselves up until a certain point. And I think hopefully we're reaching that point where we're trying to actively organize. I mean, our organization is a reflection of that in a lot of ways. But I agree with you at the local level. They very much dominate, especially in an area like Northern Virginia, where you have such a transient population of people that they're not really able to tie down any good conservative blocks to turn the tide.
Mhm.
Now, here on my screen is the proposed districting. I will say this, and I think the article goes on to talk about this. This has been blocked temporarily by I don't know where this is in the legal battle right now, but it has been blocked by a court in Tazewell County, Virginia. So this has not gone into effect yet. But I just want you to look at this, and you guys have probably seen this already. These are the districts that are being proposed right now. Okay, you can see. I mean, number 7 is crazy. These stringy districts that all share a little slice of Northern Virginia. Because keep in mind, right up here, I think I'm right on the mark, basically. That's DC. Okay. You have a district number 7, that extends out from DC all the way out to counties that border West Virginia. Okay. These people, because I looked at this, all right, people who are living out in this region of the country, beautiful region of the country, by the way, Shenandoah River Valley. I think a guy wrote a song about that at one point, but these people are making like $45,000 a year household income, right? This is a very poor area of the country. You have some very large farms that are independently owned, which we all know are not doing very well across the board, not just in Virginia, who are now being represented by DC bureaucrats and middle managers who are making $200,000 a year on individual salaries. If you took a drive along this district number 7 from here to Powhatan County, you would see two, not just different Virginias, you would see 2 different Americas. I live in this Northern Virginia area, right? I go to Walmart and I hear 3 or 4 different languages spoken in the span of me walking down the home goods aisle. So I see it firsthand, and I see this as absolutely criminal. The way they are taking these districts, district number 8, representing the Chesapeake Bay watershed area, lots of farms out there, rural, Republican. District number 7 getting down here, I believe, into like Culpeper area, very rural, farm country, lots of big farms that do cattle and those types of things. All along these areas are now being represented by people who don't even know how to change a tire for all intents and purposes. Okay. I hope and pray that this doesn't go through, but I think the important takeaway from this is Virginia is just a reflection. The first thing they did with Abigail Spanberger within 2 months of her winning office and coming in with all of these radical proposals is put her at the top of the pyramid of the Democratic Party to deliver comments in opposition to Trump and what he is advocating for. Let Virginia be a bellwether for the rest of the country as to the direction of things. And real quick, just to end off, and I'll let you guys get any final comments before we move on, but they ran as the moderate party, and they also ran as the party of affordability. Here's just a couple things right off the bat that they proposed within like the first 2 weeks. A dog walking and grooming tax, gun and ammunition tax, new income tax brackets that they don't have the percentages listed here, but would actually make Virginia the highest taxed state in the country, above California and New York. Storage facility tax, dry cleaning tax, home repair tax, new personal property taxes on electric leaf blowers and landscaping equipment. We have something in Virginia already, which is like a car tax where they tax you annually on the value of your car. And they've talked in the past about getting rid of it. Well, Abigail Spanberger's government has come in and decided that they are going to not just continue to do that, but they're going to double down with that and say that landscaping equipment also belongs in the same category. So just a wild reflection of where we are with the Democratic Party and what moderates look like amongst the Democrats. If you guys have any final comments on this, I'll let you guys say your piece now, but not a good sign.
I think it's actually worse, Sean, than just the taxation. I believe there's past the legislature, it's making its way to the governor's desk that basically bans all modern firearms. I think this was sponsored by, of course, a man from Bangladesh. It essentially turns Virginians into non-citizens. I mean, to quote Patrick Pierce, an unarmed citizen is a contradiction in terms. It's a repudiation of the idea of citizenship going back to the Greek hoplite. As a man who had his own arms, who could defend his home and his family and his city-state. And you're being reduced to bondsmen, bond servants, not men that can actually vindicate their citizenship.
I happily accept my shackles in the name of progressivism personally. Yeah, it's crazy. So, all right, well, let's move on to something positive. We're at war with Iran now. So despite all of the extra taxes that I might be facing as a Virginia citizen, I can at least count my lucky stars that I am now have been born just in time to be embroiled in a conflict in the Middle East, unlike previous generations and future generations who may not get to experience such a thing. Last night when I was planning this conversation, I was thinking, well, we're going to have a conversation about whether or not we're going to go to war with Iran. And I woke up this morning to the memes that we are at war indeed with Iran. Very interesting development. I think there's a lot of back and forth on this subject right now. We're coming off the heels of a kind of successful toppling of Venezuelan dictator Maduro. And, you know, my generation, and I think all of you would kind of fall into my generation, are always very skeptical about the regime change war because we have a storied history with a little fella from Texas named George Bush who was notoriously or intentionally bad at these regime change wars, and we kind of got a bad taste in our mouth for it. Last year, we had a limited military operation, a strike against Iran to decapitate their nuclear arsenal, their attempts at building a nuclear weapon, which they have been only 3 weeks away from having since 1996, if you listen to Netanyahu. So that, to me, seemed like that was the end state. That was the Trump admin's victory end state is Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. And of course, like somebody was saying earlier, Trump is always very bombastic about promoting how good the administration is at accomplishing their mission. And I can say wholeheartedly that Venezuela was a rounding success. I think the story's still out on Iran. I loathe the idea personally that we're caught up in another regime change war. I have no love for the mullahs or the Iranian regime. But at the same time, I consider myself an American first patriot who does not believe that we need to be sinking time and resources and money and American lives and blood into another conflict in the Middle East. Because at the end of the day, the common denominator for who benefits from this is not the country that we're proverbially going in to save and bring democracy to. It's not the American people who end up footing the bill for all of these operations and the blood lost, to take a page from Smedley Butler's War as a Racket. It is Israel, who stands to basically be the regional hegemon and be uncontested in the region, so they can go about, pardon my lack of subtlety here, but so they can go about and continue to do their little genocides and their expansion operations uncontested. I don't know. I'm kind of beside myself. I guess I'll turn it over to you guys and see where your heads are at.
So I'm a little limited in sort of my ability to discuss the situation just because there's so much to cover. There's so many things to mention. Just the history of the region itself is thousands of years old. And the key players, the key players here are literally like enemies from generations upon generations, with the exception of us as the United States, basically being the newbies spearheading the assault. One thing I will mention is that I feel an immense amount of sorrow that the United States has decided to pursue intensive foreign policy in the decade in which we've had more political assassinations on our home soil in the last 100 years since the first Civil War. We've had multiple instances where even the current president of the United States was almost killed on 3 separate occasions by crazed leftists, by people within the country that are trying to destroy it. And our focus is on Persia, on Iran, a country that has effectively done no serious damage to the United States in the last 50 years in any consequential way. We've had our skirmishes, we've had some international issues with Iran, but at the end of the day, it's not the Persians that are calling me a goy or trying to deprive me of my rights or even flooding the United States en masse. They're not the majority of illegal immigrants. They're not the individuals who are trying to deprive me of my God-given rights. They're not the ones trying to strip away my religion. And even in Iran, as a Christian, as a Catholic, there are Catholics who are allowed to be Catholic in Iran. Now, they can't convert anyone, but they are allowed to practice their religion, unlike in Saudi Arabia or in other parts of the Middle East, which is unheard of. And this is the country that we are deciding to get into an armed conflict with for the interest of another Middle Eastern country that doesn't care about us. I'll say it like this to kind of close out some of my thoughts on this. The Persians weren't the ones named in the Epstein files. They're not the ones responsible for so much of the damage happening on our home soil. And we are backing the nation that actively was involved with the Epstein files and every other issue in the United States for the past 50 years. But I turn it over to you, gentlemen, for your thoughts.
I think I have a counterpoint, maybe a devil's advocate position. I'm just completely unconcerned, frankly, with the Iran situation. I trust Marco Rubio and the Trump on this, actually. I don't think there's going to be any type of Western liberal nation building as we had with the previous administrations in this country. I think Rubio has shown that he knows what he's doing as a statesman. He's not interested in it. I think it's going to be like the Venezuela situation. In Iran, just like in Venezuela, the vast majority of the people do not support the current regime. Probably just going to be a targeted strike. The people that are going to take over might even come from the regime itself, just with a new understanding about things are going to be working. Most Iranians are not even Shia anymore. They're atheists predominantly. They're completely and utterly unsatisfied with the current regime. So like I said, I predict Rubio's precision strike to go well. And that's good. At the end of the day, I don't think we're going to be getting involved seriously, besides our missiles and drones.
Mm-hmm. And so I just heard some news. Marco Rubio will be installed as the new Ayatollah.
And I trust him.
So yeah,
Inshallah.
That's right. And I wish I could use that word more, man. We got to come up with a good one as Catholics. It's a good one. But the situation, Liam, I am a little beside myself. I feel like I should be concerned, but I only have so much empathy. I don't just generally. I am going to pray a rosary for Christians in Iran and for any and all innocent people in Iran. But a couple of things. One, I don't necessarily think it's bad for the Ayatollah that the Ayatollah has been taken out of power. I'm not going to speak on him being killed or anything from my standpoint. I can't even pretend to understand right now, as far as foreign policy, what just war, what would that be? And I think we would need a whole other segment probably on that. And a lot more intelligence for my part. But it's good when evil is displaced. But so the fact that it happened is not necessarily what I'm concerned about. But if I had to have a concern, it would be like, what is the long-term goal? Are we going in there to name the first Iranian trans clinic after Donald Trump? Is that what we want to do with Iran? I don't know. I don't know what that wants, and maybe it is. I just can't see as an American what that necessarily helps. I don't think any American really voted for this. I don't think the Trump and his administration ran on anything about bombing Iran. In fact, him and the VP JD Vance talked about, it's like, oh, we're spending so much money in the Middle East. Why are we doing that? Nobody's taking care of our roads here. And I do understand that point. On the flip side of that, maybe there is some kind of ultimate goal in that there is evil that we had stopped. I don't know what that is. I hope that this will help American interests. I am just not educated enough, and I can't conceive it in my brain what this does really for America, unless the goal is for us to go in and completely take over the Middle East, and we have the some states over in Iran. I'm not sure. But as an American, from a real point of view, I'm not necessarily concerned with it, kind of like what Liam said. But I also, if I had to think about it, I don't understand the need to have done that. And if anybody can help me understand that, and I'm sure there are smarter minds than me working on this, I just can't conceive it as a American peasant like that I am. I do not see why. I don't understand why we did it, but I am happy if the Ayatollah was displaced. Maybe some good is going to come out of that. But I did not vote for that per se.
Well, as a Catholic, no matter what the results
Yeah.
are going to be, I obviously believe that good can come from anything. And so I remain hopeful in that regard.
Yes.
My fundamental concern is not necessarily the efficacy of our ability to take down Iran or not. It's the justification of it. I agree with you, Liam, and I think it's a good point. Like, I do believe in the competency of our president and Marco Rubio and the like. I do wonder about intention. And I think in a lot of ways that the previous strikes in Iran was kind of a half measure to try to appease the Israelis without committing to a war. I don't know if you saw, but the Russian foreign minister kind of landed a jab at Trump a little bit, where he was like, most peaceful president in history is at it again, or something like that, showing his true colors. And it's like, yeah, the guy forms a board of peace a month ago, and then he starts a war a month later. Like, the optics are not good. Whether or not you can justify it or not, plain and simple, for the average person, the optics are not good. I want to believe that there is something positive, but I am like you, Nick. I don't fundamentally see what this is. My most generous offer to the scenario and the situation is that the hand was being forced by the Israelis, who do have legitimate interests there. No matter how you feel about the Israelis or not, right? You can say the Israelis have legitimate interest against the Iranian regime, and vice versa. The Iranian regime has legitimate interests against Israel. But I do feel like in a lot of ways we were kind of being cornered, and I don't know what the backroom conversations look like, but that we were being cornered. And so Trump decided to take action on his terms rather than it not being on his terms, if I were going to extend charity. And maybe that's what happens. It seems plausible. I don't really know. My other concern is, like we were all kind of saying, I don't really know what the end state is. I watched his little 8-minute speech, and he, in all intents and purposes, said regime change. Okay, well, then we got a couple hours later, the Ayatollah is dead. What does it look like next? Are we installing the guy from Bethesda? Well, I can't remember the guy's name. Literally lives in Bethesda, Maryland.
The Shaw.
Yeah, the Shah supposedly has a legitimate royal right to the seat of power in Iran. Is he going to pack up his stuff from Bethesda? I guess that's one less guy in the DMV that's affecting the politics here. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know where we're going with this. And it is too early to tell. This is almost a little weird for me to be actually doing a roundtable discussion in the heat of something going on right now. There could be some piece of news that's dropping right now that I'm not aware of. This is different than a limited military strike. Trump kind of, preceded the idea that American lives might be lost and that this might be a little bit of an extended conflict. And I pray that it's not. I pray that whatever our goals are, that it all works out peacefully and victoriously. And you know what? I will eat my words if Trump manages to pull this off without taking any casualties. I mean,
yeah,
like in Tehran.
Right. I will, dude. I will eat a shoe. But I think it's too soon to say one way or the other. I think there are legitimate concerns that open source intelligence guys bring up all the time about our munition stockpiles. I think it does make us weaker at home. I think if China decided they wanted to make a move on Taiwan, we are severely less capable of defending Taiwan, who, in my eyes, is arguably a better ally than Israel is. I mean, I've got no love for Israel, obviously. I think that this war hurts some of our Middle Eastern allies outside of Israel, who've been kind of by our side. When they're, I saw like some 5-star hotels in Dubai are taking hits from the Iranian regime, and you can pin the blame on Iran there. That's all well and good. we just don't know what the implications of this are going to be yet. And so I'm going to I'm going to bite my tongue for a little while longer and see how things shake out. And I pray for the best.
Devil's advocate just a little bit more. There is some serious geopolitical implication of why we would do this, seeing how we've lost our air bases in Afghanistan. There's some talk some weeks ago about trying to negotiate with the Taliban. Well, who's moved in the meantime into Afghanistan? Our number one geopolitical enemy, the Chinese. And so it does make some geopolitical sense looking at the grand board of strategy to bring a friendly regime into Persia to give us land and air access to the region.
I guess if you believe in the empire, if you're a nationalist like me and you believe in regional, I mean, China has been moving into Africa for decades. Well, for a decade or two uncontested. So what, do we want influence there or not?
We have to reconcile as American nationalists with the fact that there is an American empire, whether we want it or not, it exists. And so our guys who've made it to the halls of power are having to act in that situation with that reality. And so we're going to have serious conversations about, okay, what happens when we do come to power more so than we already are, and we have to make these tough decisions. So I don't totally agree with what the administration is doing, but I do understand it, is what I guess I'm trying to say.
I can reckon. Sorry, I'll let you talk, Nick. I was just going to say to go
No,
back.
you're fine. Go ahead. I'm listening. Go ahead.
I can agree with that because I can say that there's no example in history where an empire goes ahead and willingly dismantles itself. So there is a certain momentum at a certain point that has to be maintained. Is it my ideal world? Not necessarily, because I'm much more of, I believe the nation serves the people. I believe an empire serves interests. That's kind of where I align, but we're in the situation that we're in. So I just can hope that the best, most virtuous and competent people are acting in accordance with their own moral compasses to the greatest degree that they can. Go ahead, Nick.
I'm sorry, I forgot what I was going to say. Those are all really good points, especially like no, you're good. Like Liam, you are completely right. Like whether we like it or not, America is an empire. But does such empire serve the empire's interest, or does it serve another country's interest? And again, I don't know, but I do think whether left or right, New Columbia movement or not, you have to give, Operation Epic Fury some credit. One, that was a pretty awesome name. But I don't want to, minimize it here. I'm sure maybe some innocent lives were lost. At the same time, you have to admit that the execution of this strike, the Ayatollah is reported dead. I'm pretty sure, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I'm just seeing what's reported, that pretty much all of the big players in Iran are gone quickly. So that leads you to think about, so I'm 32, and I don't know, I may be the oldest on here right now by maybe a couple of years or a few years. But most of my life, we've been in forever wars. And you can clearly see with these last strikes with Maduro and with the Ayatollah, that those forever wars were on purpose, it seems like. And it's very clear that with the technology that we have, with a little bit of brain power, that if America is going to strike, then they can, and they'll do it quickly. Swift justice. And so far, again, please correct me if you all have heard anything different, I don't think there's any American casualties at this point in time that I know of. I hope that continues. I hope it can stay clean. And like you said, Sean, I just don't want to be dragged in to another 20-year war. The implications of this are up in the air right now. I know there are perceived ones, but I think just maybe a And I'd love to do another discussion panel right after all these things come out, because it'll come out pretty quickly with how fast X moves. They're already joking about how the Ayatollah is going to be participating in the midterm elections.
Well,
it's so
a federal judge overturned his killing. So
right. So we don't even know if he's gone. Right. And that federal judge is from Iran. So, but I definitely think that my biggest concern is, one, the execution of it was really good, but I'm scared. Well, I'm not scared. I'm worried that it may turn into maybe another 20-year thing, and I don't want that. And the next steps are, we're really going to install another democracy, are we? What does that look like?
It's kingdom, the show.
Yeah, I hope if we did, I hope we must reinstall Persia.
With Marco Rubio as the viceroyal, the Shah.
Absolutely. He'll be
who rules over all the fish of the sea and all the birds of the air and the hanging gardens of Babylon.
But it still seems much more beautiful for that to happen. I hope that is probably best case scenario, that Marco Rubio is the Shah of Persia.
Hey, you know what I'll say? Whatever our opinions are, I think we can all agree that the efficacy of the strikes is a far cry from something like the withdrawal of Afghanistan and the disaster of Kabul. So, we may not agree with the direction, but we at least got competent people in charge. And I think we can all agree on that.
They are effective. Yeah.
If I can have some closing remarks, I'm unfortunately going to have to go in a little bit, boys, but this is something I actually neglected to mention. The American warfighter has proven himself yet again as the most effective warfighter on the face of planet Earth. And every time that we've kind of been stumbled as a nation in our warfighting capability, it is usually because of a strategic plunder and is not because of the effectiveness of the American soldier. And these last two strikes have proven how surgical we are when we actually care about committing to a specific course of action, even if it's a dumb action. Or right or wrong, it's a clear course of action. And that's something that we've lacked for 20 years with the Bush administration, with the Obama years, and some elements of Trump's first term. But he did a pretty good job with eliminating ISIS in less than a year. Yeah. I want to give a shout out to all the warfighters out there who are currently struggling for their home. And I pray very, very deeply every night for peace for the people, not only in Persia, but in Israel, all throughout the Middle East, and that we may have no American casualties. Because the last thing I want to see is a flag draped over a coffin brought back in a Chinook or in any other airplane. I don't want to see another grave in Arlington. It's always a very moving thing when I go in Northern Virginia and I visit those graves. It would be a damn shame to see another headstone.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to end on that subject. I want to wrap up really quick with some rapid fire stuff, just some topics that didn't warrant as much conversation. Maybe some of them did, but we just don't have the time for it tonight. I was going to do a minute or less, but let's drop it down to 30 seconds or less. I mean, cumulatively, not 30 seconds each. So don't run your yapper. This is like a word exercise, whatever comes to your mind. All right. So we'll go around the board. We'll go Liam, Nick, and Tyler. Okay. So we'll start. Winter Olympics.
Irrelevant.
Nick?
I have a lot to say on the Winter Olympics.
You don't get that time.
I'm completely joking. So go USA. All Canada has left is maple syrup.
Canada sucks. What you got, Tyler?
I would say the day of the rake has come and Hapa Winter has officially arrived on Twitter.
Right on. Yeah,
in hockey.
I was ashamed to see so many people ashamed of representing our country at the Winter Olympics, but I was glad to see that the hockey team was proud to be there, and I was also proud to see that they represented their country beautifully, and they were honored and respected in such a great way. So glad to see that. Good news, white pill here. Kim Jong-un was reelected. Liam.
Not surprised. It's interesting to see that the Kim regime has not been toppled yet after everything that happened with Donald Trump and that amazing, the best ever saunter into North Korea. And it's interesting to see the power politics talking about his daughter so early.
For me, I don't have much of an opinion. I'd be surprised if he didn't win the next election. So
Judaism lives, and I'm actually kind of shocked.
I just wish we had the same confidence in our political leaders as Korea does in theirs, personally. I wish I had it to show. I actually have a ticket for a train ride into North Korea for Unification Day. I purchased it when I was in Korea. I hope to use it one day.
Wow.
Kim Jong-un, if you're out there, I'd love to come say hi. If you're listening, Kim Jong-un, I know he's a big fan of the show. All right. Cuba.
It'd be really interesting to see if we get another Venezuela. I know Marco Rubio, obviously, he's a Cuban American. He definitely has self-interest, family interest in toppling the Castro regime personally. So if Trump gives him the go-ahead, it's definitely happening.
I'm ignorant of the broader topic, but I have gotten news that Marco Rubio has become the governor of Cuba.
Sure.
I'm fully on board because it's American tradition to bully Cuba some more. So I hope Marco Rubio is the perpetual governor of Cuba. Long may his reign be.
I have been to Cuba twice. Believe it
How
or not.
was it?
Not that great. I will say Cuban cigars are completely overrated. All of the best cigar manufacturers left when communism took over and went to different parts of Central and South America. But I do believe we can make Cuba great again. Again, as a nationalist who believes in I believe in influencing our sphere. I can't say that word. Cuba falls in that realm.
We're also responsible for the Castro regime, so ultimately.
And that too. Yes. Yeah. I do believe we have a level of responsibility down there. Okay. Alien disclosure. Apparently we're going to be disclosing aliens.
It's fake. There's no aliens. It's like military planes or the Chinese.
Yeah. It's a psyop right now. I think American government thinks we're stupid. And that's all I will say on that politely.
Alien disclosure. I thought we already knew there were illegal aliens in the country.
I would like to displace some aliens for sure. I don't know about disclosing aliens.
What is that movie, District 9?
Yeah, if we're going to disclose aliens, I say let's disclose let's disclose some Epstein files first before we get to the aliens, unless they're on the Epstein list. Which brings me to my next one, the Epstein file release. I know it's hard to sum this up. This could be a whole conversation, but sum it up for me.
Wow, I'm so surprised our incompetent, evil elites are just evil, sick people.
I do think it's funny that it's rocking Europe, but people in Europe that are on it are actually getting arrested. Nobody in America is. And I think that's a bit suspect. And then we go bomb Iran. So
Having read through a fair portion of the files, I think two things have become apparent that have made me feel very hollow inside. And that's number one, everything regarding Pizzagate when it originally came out, not before it became like really crazy, was proven true. And number two is it's pretty much confirmed at this point that Epstein was like an Israeli fixer.
Yeah, conspiracy theorists were right again. But it doesn't really pay to be right if there's not going to be any action taken. And it's just it's a disappointment to see all of this stuff come out and nothing get done. Last one for the rapid fire. Canadian assisted suicide program.
It's just terrible that these programs are persisted in Canada and across Europe. Their evil's already been exposed to the world. Normal people revolt at it, and yet it's still going on.
So this is a clear sanctity of life issue. It really is a cautionary tale about what happens when a secular state loses a Christian ethic on the value of human life. And you see this is the fruit of the Enlightenment, and it's death. So yeah, those are my thoughts on that.
This is very close to my heart. I honestly think the Canadian government has no legitimacy and it needs to be replaced. This is one of the most disgusting policies ever enacted by any government.
It's a good point.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. Canada is rapidly losing their right to self-determination, just by the actions that they're taking. If we're going to influence somebody in our sphere, I think Canada is ripe for the picking. There were people receiving the assisted suicide the same day they submitted their paperwork unwittingly. There was, a matter of fact, there's a case example of a woman who retracted her paperwork. She changed her mind, and her family still insisted that the doctors go ahead with it, and they did against her will. So it is abhorrent, and Canada has the audacity to lecture us about anything is absurd and insane. These people are sick. They lost a hockey match, and now they've lost their right to self-determination. And it's disgusting. So with that, gentlemen, it's been a great conversation. Now, obviously, we talk about a lot of heavy subjects. So in the tradition of our roundtable, we always want to finish off with a white pill, something positive and enlightening to keep us hopeful and charged going forward. So I will start with mine. I am finding value in my Lenten sacrifices this year. I have gotten rid of social media. I have done away with a lot of my kind of like passive gaming activities, which has resulted in me spending a lot more time in prayer, a lot more time spiritual reading, a lot more time in productive tasks outside of my spiritual life. And it is a healthy change for me, especially in light of all the recent events. It's easy to spiral when you're constantly sucked into the feed of social media. So it's been a good time for me to be away from that, and it's given me a lot of strength and energy. Tyler, why don't you go next?
I will say that there is hope. There's a lot of hope because more men and women today, more than ever, with the release of the Epstein files, understand the truth about what's going on, not only in our country, not only in the United States and America, but throughout the world, understanding who runs the world elite and all of the nefarious things that they've been up to. And more people are asking, what can I do to fix this? This is a time for action. And movements like ours need to be decisive and utilize our manhood in a productive manner in order to actually influence that action. Because the desire for change is there. We need to be the ones to push that ball and to get action going.
What do you got, Liam?
My white pill is Rupert Lowe, MP over in the United Kingdom and England. He launched his Restore Britain Party. I think I last saw they're already at 100,000 members. And so it's just great to see our guys in the mother country in England fighting back against the controlled opposition that we have in the right-wing space with the Conservative Party, of course, in the UK, and even Reform with Nigel Farage. Rupert Lowe is a great man. He has a great team of people, young Zoomer Christians around supporting him. And I hope we can have that in our own country one day. And Godspeed, hope they're successful.
Yeah, that could have been a conversation piece all in and of itself tonight. We just didn't have the time. So yeah, that's a good one. Nick, why don't you round us out there?
Absolutely. So with all of this stuff going on, all of the topics that we've talked about tonight going on all over the world, I do think it's important to take a step back and figure out what is this all for? I was able, after a long work week, to spend some very quality time with my 2 young children and my wife here locally in my town. And I had one of the best times of my life today. And I realized how truly blessed I am to have such a good family that God blessed me with to protect and provide and preside over them. It is a duty, but it is also a pleasure. And all of these things we have talked about, and that all of these things that the New Columbia movement truly stands for, it really is like, what can you do for your country? But at the heart of it is to restore the primacy of the family unit as central to a country. We are not an economic zone. We are a nation. It's very important to do that. And that really put it in perspective for me today.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's a great way to end off. Once again, guys, Catholic Manhood. If you're not following him already, please go and follow all of his socials, follow his Substack. Lots of good stuff over there. It will be a value added. I truly believe that. Gentlemen, thank you guys all for being here tonight. For those of you guys who are watching and tuning in, thank you very much for watching and tuning in. I hope you got something out of our conversation. Let's utilize the comment section a little bit more. Let me know down below. Do you guys kind of agree with our train of thought tonight? Do you guys have some pushback? Share your thoughts and comments below. I want to hear it. And maybe we can take some of that and use it for our next conversation. With that, there's a lot going on with the NCM, which I will run through very briefly. I will tease a little bit. We are going to be far more active on YouTube going forward this year. We have a couple of new series that are going to be coming up with some more faces on the channel. Outside of just myself, which will be a great help to me and hopefully value added for all of you guys. We will obviously continue with the roundtables as well and try to be a lot more consistent with that as well. Especially, it seems like it's going to be a crowded year for topics, so a lot to talk about. Please check out our website if you guys have not checked it out already. There's a lot going on. We also have a newsletter that you can subscribe to on the website. You can follow us on X. That is our biggest platform. We were zucked off of Instagram and Facebook a while ago, but we are clawing our way back to the top on both of those platforms as well. So if you're already following us on X, which you probably are, and if you're following us here on YouTube, that's great. Please go and support our growth both on Facebook and on Instagram so we can try to get those back and going again. I will provide the links to both of those down in the description below. Nick, I will also provide a link to your Catholic Manhood page if people want to go and check that out, and a link to our website so you guys can go and subscribe to our newsletter and reach out if you want to be a member. We do have some new things coming in the future as far as membership goes, some exciting prospects that I won't mention yet because nothing is fully formed, but for you little ones out there looking for a good fraternity to join, keep us in mind. All right, reach out. Maybe get the chance to talk to me, come on board. I'm always looking for new friends. I like friends. I pay these guys to be here. I need some real ones. Guys, thank you so much again for being here. All of you guys watching, God bless. Pray for our nation, and we will catch you next time.
Amen. Thank you guys so much. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Y'all have a good day.